Welcome back, everybody. This is number 3 in a, I don't know how many part series this is going to be on creating a lure from scratch, lure design and lure engineering. On the last one, number 2, we went through the volumetrics. The actual density of the wood already had our defined shapes. We went ahead and cut out the patterns, cutting out the general shape, and then grinding back for a more refined but still rough relative shape. Now, what I've done here is I've taken that shape to a more finished state. So you can see that I did do a little bit of carving. First, let me apologize to all you people who are going to be upset that I didn't demonstrate my carving. I don't really feel I'm a very good carver, and I don't think my techniques are that great. I would recommend that you go and look at some of the really talented carvers out there that are making lures. And I'll put a couple of links in the description below this, so you guys can go check it out. So first, let's just talk about what I'm after. What you really need to look and focus on, not just decoration and sort of the aesthetic. You really are shooting for symmetry. Now, when I say symmetry, most of you know what that means. It means that one side of the lure, if you cut it in half, is exactly like the other half. That's really difficult to achieve when you're carving by hand. And there's very few really good tricks to doing it. It's not a bad idea to have a penciled center line in so that you can eyeball down a center line back and forth. You'll find that your fingers are really good at detecting little humps and indentation and knowing when it's a little asymmetric. So let me just say, I don't generally do much carving. This is probably as ornate a carving job as I've ever done. Normally I'll carve in some gill plates, and most everything else is either a functional fin like that or just carved out functional areas so that things fit together. Again, just really simple gill slits, nothing fancy. I mean, most of my lures are smooth. But when I do carve and I have to sand, I use a few tools that are real simple and basic, and I'm sure many of you already use them. These are sanding blocks, and if you don't have these, I highly recommend you buy them. They're a little bit expensive in the big box stores. I think one of these things is like $3 or $4. I buy them online by the dozen, and I think they come out to like maybe 80 cents a piece. I get varying grit, and this is really coarse. This one's a little lighter, all the way down almost to a polishing grit. I make my own little sanding blocks. This is just a piece of plastic that I put sandpaper on, and what I like to do is roll the sandpaper up onto the edge. That gives me a little bit of bite up if I'm going up into a tight little spot, like up in here. This is a little contouring block. It's just a piece of balsa that I sanded a half round in it, and that's really good for getting into these areas here where you're really trying to shape. Also, this sandpaper I discovered this year, it's a 3M, it's not cheap, but what's nice is it's sandpaper on a latex backing, and it's stretchy, so it's kind of nice. You can sort of stretch it around your thumb or stretch it around something else. Here's a little piece of wood I took, and it's rectangular on one end, and it has a semicircular end, and that allows me to get into, hollows, small hollows on a dowel, and this is real handy too. These are all real simple things you can do, and you've probably already been doing similar things. Really good crutch to use when you're gonna eyeball the symmetry on a lure like this. Seal it and paint it black with the black surface. Really helps you out picking out those areas of asymmetry so you can sand them back. Now that we got the handicraft part out of the way, let's talk a little engineering. Since I have the density of the wood, I can weigh it and I'll know the exact volume. So let's do that right now. We have 8.07 grams. Remember, the density of the wood is 0.476 grams per milliliter. if we know what the weight of the lure is in grams, 8.07 grams, all we have to do is divide this by the density, and that'll give us the volume of the lure. 16.95 milliliters. Now that's pretty close to 17. I'm going to call it 17 milliliters. What that tells me is that when I go to pour it in my mold, I need 17 milliliters of epoxy, a 2-part epoxy. And when I go to make the mold, I know that I can just measure the inside volume of my mold box and subtract half this body volume, which is 8.5 milliliters. And I'll have the exact amount of silicone I'll need to make the mold. The other thing that is really handy, that is the amount of water it will displace. What that means is that for this lure to be perfectly suspending, theoretically, right, all else being good, it has to weigh, including all the hooks and everything, it has to weigh 17 grams. So that's a really handy piece of information. So I know right from the get-go that I can weigh the body, weigh all the hooks, and weigh all the hardware, and then anything less than 17, I just add enough weight to have it be 17 plus to make it sink slowly. So you get all that information from just getting a little bit of work at the beginning, cutting that little block and measuring and doing a little calculation. Okay, so the next step I want to take is to go ahead and find the center of gravity, or a doggone close proximity to it. And if you haven't seen my method of doing that, you need to watch the video on the weight and balance on topwater. Okay, so there is my center of gravity, or close to it. I'm going to go ahead and place my belly hook right about here, which is just behind the eye, right at the wide point, which is likely close or just forward of the center of gravity. This is a really good technique for finding for getting really close to where that center of gravity really is. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little hole in here, just temporary, so I have a place to hold this while I dip it and seal it. Okay, well, I went ahead and sealed it overnight, and I also painted it black. I'm pretty happy with the symmetry. Hopefully you can see there, it's pretty symmetric all the way through. Now there's some areas where there's divots and some rough areas, and I'm going to have to find some other way to fill those in, because if I continue to sand, I'm going to continue to take the soft stuff out and leave the hard stuff. So the last step I want to take in this video, so we don't run too long, is to apply this putty on here. So it'll allow me to fill in the low spots and sand back to a smooth glazed finish. But it works really well because you can smear it on real thin, and then it sets up in about 20 minutes. What you want to do is spread it with something that's relatively smooth on an edge and flexible. I'm using a piece of paper that I folded over. It's heavy stock paper. Well, I've got it pretty much covered. You can start seeing that it's getting pale in color. That means it's setting up, but I'm not going to bore you with sanding. Next time you'll see it, it will have been sanded completely. I'll have clear coated it, and it'll be ready for mold making. And that's what we'll do next time. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't. I'll catch you on the next video.